Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Attention Shift podcast. Before we get into the pod, we need to talk about how the fan landscape is changing. According to the Financial Times, time spent on social media peaked back in 2022 and has been falling ever since. But if social is in decline, how are you going to stay connected with your fans? That's exactly why at Display we launched the Anonymous Fan Index. We brought together the leaders of sports business to identify the biggest gaps in fan understanding and a clear path for ensuring you stay connected to your audience.
Welcome to The Attention Shift, a podcast where sports media gets debated, memed, duetted, stitched and reposted faster than I can say multi-platform media. Hello and welcome to a special episode of The Attention Shift podcast. I'm Jo Redfern.
I'm Lee Rabon.
And I'm Ed Abbis.
Who have we got with us today, Ed?
We've got Joe Darkins from Burnley Football Club. We've talked about Burnley quite a bit.
You have.
Well, I talk about Burnley in every episode that we do. So we thought it'd be great to get someone on for the club to come and have a chat to us. Joe is Burnley's very first CTO.
I am, yeah.
Got the title right. That's a good start. So we thought it'd be interesting to understand, obviously, what a CTO does in a football club, because it's not necessarily always been a role that's been prevalent in football clubs. But also, like I said, we do talk a lot on the podcast about Burnley, or I do about Burnley, and a lot of the things that the club's doing and in terms of innovation. So we thought,
yeah,
it's the best person to come speak to us.
Great to be here.
Thanks, Colin.
So to start off then, when did Burnley identify that they needed someone with your skill set in that kind of role at the club, in terms of why did they feel like they needed a CTO? Because look, Burnley's I'd love us to be like top 6 Premier League team, but sort of like we're aiming for sort of mid-level. It's coming. We're aiming for mid-level at the moment, so yeah, we're going in the right direction. But why did they feel like now was the time to make that jump?
Look, I think the moment you can trace back to the ownership change, right? The current ownership, ALK Capital, when they took over the club, there's definitely a shift, and they see technology as like a key pillar in terms of fan engagement, in terms of just data, and really just trying to drive the club forward more than anything else. Burnley, as you said, has been. You kind of see it across the entire organisation, right? I think you're seeing all the boundaries being pushed across marketing, across the fan experience, etc. Across everywhere. Technology is just one of those that the club, the ownership are trying to like really drive forward.
And how long have you been in post now?
Coming up to 2 years.
Okay. And so what has surprised you most about their tech infrastructure so far?
There was some stuff to fix on day one.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a few things that needed picking up immediately, and thankfully we sorted that out pretty quickly.
I think there was still some things in place when I worked there.
Yeah,
19 years ago.
Yeah.
So and that's not being derogatory in any way. I think just the club was where the club was. It was being invested in certain areas, but not in others.
Yeah,
from as a fan and knowing, obviously having worked there and knew that some things were still there.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I mean, there wasn't anyone really like taking ownership of that tech budget, and naturally you're going to have some challenges with that. The guys there are fantastic, and they were doing what they could, but I think it's helped just having somebody come in and really kind of grab it and just say, look, we need to invest here, here, and here, and hopefully that's really helped kind of moving things forward from that kind of, I'd say, the older infrastructure that we used to have just to start with.
Because we've talked about that a lot before, about silos of technology or silos of data, and is that part of the problem that you faced, and how do you approach that? How do you, when we talk about like unifying your databases, because you get this sort of 360-degree view of a fan, and I guess that's one element of your job. How do you approach that? How do was it like a bit all over the place, a bit of a Frankenstein's monster? And then have you got a strategy in place that's kind of unifying that at the moment? Yeah,
the data was joined. I mean, when I joined, they'd just done a deal with a firm, and you'll see that their SSO, like the sign on, you can sign into ticketing, you can sign into the e-commerce, you can sign into the website with single credentials. So that's kind of building that kind of centralization of that data. I think, I've met with them recently to like talk about what the future looks like. And, it's very much how then do you take that to the next step of trying to unify that fan, kind of that one view of a fan. Everyone's like trying to drive to that one view of a fan, right? There's nothing kind of revolutionary in explaining it. In terms of the technical like complexities of trying to do it, it's actually quite complex. Because fundamentally, if you've got somebody, it's easy somebody signs on a website, right? But it's completely separate if somebody's trying to get a pint at halftime and you want to be able to like understand, what people are spending their money on during a game, because who's going to sit there when you want a pint and then pull out the phone, try and pull out the right QR code, like scan it against a scanner in order to be able to, and what's that loyalty and value exchange? So there's lots going on.
And what constituent parts, for the uninitiated, what constituent parts of technology do you look after? I mean, we're talking about fan data there, but we mentioned before we started recording cybersecurity. What are those buckets that you've got to have a holistic view over in your role?
So kind of digital platforms. I help with, some of the football data contract side of things as well. I look after the networking. That's everything from, the backbone network, the connectivity and the Wi-Fi, all the usual stuff. I look after cybersecurity, everything down to kind of like, there's the AI strategy, like everything across the club around technology, really. I mean, and it's been interesting coming in and understanding where those where those barriers lie.
Yeah.
Because naturally, especially with SaaS platforms now, like different departments can kind of go like, well, I know what I want anyway, and I'm just signing a check and we're getting it done. But you still need some oversight and governance over what those platforms look like so that they feed in, so that we are creating not just a single view of a fan, but we're also kind of like making sure the data of the club is all centralized as well, so we can make better educated decisions across the organization.
Sort of shadow IT that you get where marketing decide to go with one type of thing and someone else goes with something else, and it's IT classic IT manager I guess it's before you would have been like, okay, well, they may not have even seen it.
100%. I mean, like, look, it's a delicate balance to kind of like work with. You don't want to slow departments down, so some things you're just like, okay, crack on. So if the commercial team want to use LinkedIn, for example, Sales Navigator, I'm like, that's not my bag. There's not much value I can add. But on the other side, if somebody's doing something that's got PII data for my fans, for example, I'm like, hold on a second. Let's put some structure on this to make sure, hopefully, we should be all right going forwards.
So interesting that with tech and look, AI is now becoming a catalyst for technology and choices and how you're connecting things together. So how are you seeing that Burnley are, capitalising on that? And we've had a few chats about it, and obviously you know a lot more about it than I do. And obviously there's a lot developing at a rapid rate. How is that leading into what's going on in the Innovation Hub? Is that partly connected to that, or is that?
So I wouldn't say the Innovation Hub's like the Innovation Hub that we've got at Burnley is focused more just on, partnering with those startups that can really impact the club. If they happen to have AI, that's definitely part of it. But I'd say that the AI side is separate to that. If that makes sense.
So can you tell us a bit more about the Innovation Hub? Because obviously you see it a lot more now where clubs are seen to be investing in their sort of innovators programs, different fundings. Like, how does it work for Burnley? How what's your involvement in
sure. Hub? I mean, I don't run the Innovation Hub. That's run by Penelope Evans, and she's fantastic. So she's working on the ALK level. And really, I think, so I've been part of this in my previous role. So before here, I worked, and there was a venture capital arm of the business that we had, and that venture capital arm made some really good investments going forwards. And I was helping them vet the companies that they were bringing into that venture capital organization. So I've seen firsthand where startups can come in within a company and really kind of motor it and really add value to both sides, right? And the venture capital arm that I used to work with, it was unbelievable seeing these small companies coming in, and they would then effectively partner across the organization and really kind of drive hyper growth of that startup going forwards across the whole organization. That was awesome. And you can hope that something similar is going to happen at Burnley, right? Companies that are chomping at the bit to get into Premier League clubs and get that exposure and get that buy-in. I'm here to help facilitate with Penelope that, they find the right investments, and I'm there to help make sure that, I'll have a look at them early on and just talk with Penelope and work in partnership and just say, look, that's something that, I think we could really work with and that we could accelerate through the organization as well. So super interesting time, really, really fascinating. And she's fantastic. And, absolutely welcome anyone to reach out to her.
What would success look like when you're assessing? So I think it's really interesting, because I know there's different people who's always trying to get into tech clubs, and I think tech companies trying to get into clubs and stuff like that. So
Yeah, you've seen it happen a lot.
Yeah.
We spoke to a few, because of the nature of the kind of things we do as well. We spoke to a few franchises in the US, right? And said, "Do you want to come and join this?" I'm like, "Well, that's not necessarily where we are as a business right now. There are other businesses that are all starting out that it would suit better than us, because we've got certain structures in place." But they see you doing cool stuff, and they go, "Oh, do you want to come and be part of this?" And then the experience we've had is sometimes they've said to us, "Okay, then so you do this project for us, we get some equity in your business," but then there's no real outcome from it. Like, well, wait a minute, like just doing a project and giving some equity is not necessarily helping us to scale. Like we already know we can do this. We've done this time and time again elsewhere. And I know you don't want to be like that, right? You want to get some real tangible benefit for both sides.
100%. It's got 100%. It's got to be a win-win.
So how do you do that differently then at Burn to make sure it is win-win for both parties?
Well, and arguably, my day job's running the club, and I think that's why they brought in Penelope. Because she's the one that can work with all the different departments on the different opportunities, and say, how is this going to benefit you, and how's this going to benefit the club, and create that kind of win-win situation. But also understanding, can we actually implement this tech within the organization as well? Should hopefully give us the right foundation to effectively set us up for the win, right? For both of us, right?
And those decisions to invest into those tech companies, are they the nuts and bolts of technology and management, or are there some interesting fan experiences that you see coming through?
I don't know what the final list is of what I've seen at the moment. There's everything from you're obviously the data plays. There's some really cool fan experience as well, gamification. There's some kind of I'm one of these. I really like some of the flashy stuff, but I'm also just like, I'm a bread and butter infrastructure guy.
Yeah.
So I actually quite like some of the...
I know what you're chatting about. Like, is there any actual point in that though? Like, it looks nice, but...
somebody should come along and people are like, "Oh, well, it's not, it's not flash and shiny," but I'm like, you know what? That's really good tech.
Yeah.
It's going to really smash it out of the park. Like, there's a few of those as well. I'll hold and let Penelope kind of provide the big reveal, but there's definitely some interesting companies that have come across as well, and some exciting opportunities.
What made you join Burnley? What was the driver?
I really like complexity.
Yeah,
always have. Like, I've always I started working in the city in London when I graduated because I really liked kind of like the complexity there. I go into technology because I like complex things. For me, football club was like, I was always kind of like looking from the outside as a football fan, going like, "Oh my God, like that's just fascinating," or like how on earth does that operate? It's like, and it isn't, and it's unlike any other business I've worked in. Right? It's very different. I've worked in some of the fastest growing startups in Europe. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. But I've also played, lacrosse for England for, 8 years, and, a big sports background, huge football fan. So it's just amazing to be able to bring it together. And I actually think an external view of technology coming into football is actually quite healthy. Because I've seen, I've seen, not necessarily that it's done well, I've seen it done, poorly as well, but I think that external experience helps kind of coming into a football club of trying to change how it's seen.
Do you think there's obviously you said you've obviously been a sports professional yourself, and then also working like startups and city, like what is it, the things that you think, well, actually there's that thing that's really done really well over here that you wanted to bring to Burnley, or think that clubs could take forward? Like, is there not just one thing, but like you kind of said there, like that external point of view gives you a really objective and probably gives you a real advantage. Is there something that you think actually it's that bit of experience that kind of really has given me a bit game changing?
Interesting you say that. I think for me it's the expectation of the partners that we work with. Yeah. I think some of the partners in football and the fantastic businesses, but I think they're used to kind of working within the sports environment and coming in and saying, "Hold on a second, like that's not how I'm used to firms operating," in terms of the openness of their platforms and how they're trying to tie you into certain things. For certain clubs that works really, really well, but it's the nature of football that makes it so interesting, is because you've got smaller Division 2 clubs, and then you've got these Premier League, and like there's only a finite number of them, right? You know, if you look at the number of like, I know, recruitment firms in the country, right? You know, there's thousands of them everywhere, but you've got this kind of artificially constrained number of clubs, and you've got these limited suppliers, and they've got to try and cater for both. So it's just, I'm trying to work with them to go like, look, there's new ways of working here, how you can do X, Y, and Z, and hopefully it's going to work. But that to me is really useful.
I think with Burnley, I mean, and then obviously, look, I'm at sort of the older end of the spectrum now, and obviously I've got a lot. Thank you. A lot of my friends are similar kind of age, right? And
Whippersnappers.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's a lot of talk about a lot of things that are happening at the club now. I hear this phrase all the time. Oh, it's not for us though. It's not for us, because Burnley was. I think he's unique in a lot of ways. It's the most important thing in the place it's from. It has always very much been about the local fan, right? And there's a real intensity with that local fan. But ultimately, it can't scale if you don't start to embrace the international fan. But you still want to maintain, and I see it myself, that local edge to it. And I think, like, you know, ALK coming in, it probably took them a few years to sort of work out what that looked like. And I've obviously heard the chairman talking about now he's going over to Espanyol. Some of the experiences he's had at Burnley will do things slightly differently, and that's not in a derogatory sense. You just learn, right? That's if you don't learn, then you never move forward. But how are you finding that balance now? Because I think this it feels like the ownership's starting to move into a phase now of being a bit more mature about how he's doing things to maintain that still that local feel, but ultimately then reach that wider audience that it's going to need to be able to scale and. I imagine have the funds to be able to continue to compete at a Premier League level, and how what you're doing ultimately putting that, I guess, that infrastructure in place for being able to do it.
Yeah, big question. I'll try and break it down.
Sorry,
right? No, it's good.
A bit there.
I think it's personal preference, right? You're like, Burnley fan through and through, so it's like, I can see it's.
I did love everything I saw early on, but it feels like it's settling down now, and it feels things are more thought through when they happen. Because I think it's just natural, right? They wanted to change things. It needed change, right? It had not changed. Like I said, I left nearly 20 years ago, and it had not changed that much in that period of time. Now you start to see it, but it feels more like things are evolving rather than it's an evolution rather than a revolution now. I feel.
I mean, how many clubs do you see where the chairman gets set up in front of the fans with a microphone?
Rarely these days,
right?
Rarely. It used to happen a lot 20 years ago. Now it just doesn't happen.
In Burnley, with a microphone in front of all the fans, answering questions he's never heard of, right? And just as an open forum.
And wanders around on match days, right? Goes and sees people.
Russell Ball is doing, he works tirelessly for the fans.
Yeah.
Local and international as well. But we also have a local fan forum, right, to make sure, and that's completely open. Meet regularly. I think they're meeting this week actually, and they take it incredibly seriously at a local level. It would be so. I think from a local perspective, the club is incredibly cognizant of the value of local fans and what they bring on match day and the passion. And then you've got the international side as well, and that growth. You're looking at Do Perfect, JJ Watt, the partnerships we're trying to make across international borders. Every club's trying that, right? And I don't think anyone would turn around and be like, if Burnley weren't doing it, you'd be like, why aren't your question would be like, why aren't you? 100%. So I think so you've got to create that balance, but it feels to me, as you said, that there does feel like there's that right balance at the moment. And in terms of people saying, it's not for me, it's on the same way, I think part of my job is trying to look at new trends and innovation.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a demographic that wants the change in innovation. So again, when I come back to that complexity point before of why it's complex in an organization, I mean, again, you just look at the customer demographic that you're working with, right? And it's you've got that complete spectrum going from international to local, and you're trying to create this amazing product. It's always going to be a challenge, and fans are difficult to please. But
I was going to say, sorry, it's interesting one as well. I imagine you'll have changed in the last few years, but I always remember as well from when I worked there that as much as it's a local fan base, there's a lot of local people who've moved away and come back regularly to the club. Like I've lived away for the last 20 years, but I still go back, and friends in London who were never even originally from Burnley, but their father chose them in the 60s and started to come, they really come back to the club. And it's a bad place. Say you go around the world, you always meet someone from Burnley,
100%.
It's crazy for a small town.
All roads lead back to Burnley. 100%. Yeah.
So I was going, yeah, Joe, you were going to ask a question.
No, I was going to, because what you've just articulated is something that I talk about a lot with regards to entertainment, as in now you've got to have an ecosystem approach to any content that you're making. You've got to have your approach for your social first fans. How do you make content that satisfies those that want a 15-second quick piece of content on TikTok versus a 6-hour deep dive on YouTube and gaming and all of that? It requires this kind of ecosystem approach. And it's similar to what you were saying with balancing local versus international. How are you seeing technology in football in general, but particularly in your role? How are you seeing technology facilitate that kind of multi-platform approach that you need for all of those fans, whether they're just down the road or they're sitting in a different country?
In terms of the content, or
just in terms of how you get to know those fans, how do you then serve them with the right kind of content or just service from Burnley? How are you joining all of those dots?
Yeah, sure. I think when we're bringing platforms into the club, we're trying to make sure that they can all leverage the data sets that we're trying to build, right? And those data sets should create the best picture and articulate of our fans that we possibly can. And I know our marketing team does a lot of work to try and identify fans in terms of how far away they are, the tickets they buy, what kind of fans, and they put them into the personas that you need. So the technology platforms that you bring in need to be able to supplement that and really enhance what they're trying to do. So, I wouldn't say necessarily that there's particular things that we're doing. It's just a general strategic approach, which is, we need to be able to leverage that. And all the fans want that personalized experience and that connection to the club. And, through technology is the way we're going to deliver it. And so I think, that comes from the data side of what we're doing, the digital platforms, all the way through to streaming, all the way through to, loyalty schemes. So there's a lot of facets that we're trying to bring together.
Ultimately, you kind of want the technology to be silent and working so well that it just kind of almost, happens, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%, just like a referee, right?
You don't
100%. You want technology to be just like a referee. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
And now let's go over to quickfire questions with Joe.
Right, Joe. We're going to do quick fire questions now. We've both had a stab at this you two have had a stab on this on the previous podcast. It went out. I mean, how good it was. You're the first guest to do it. You're the first guest anyway. So no pressure. You'll probably do a better job than we did. So quick fire questions. You've got a minute to do it. We've got 15 questions to get through. Obviously, we'd like to get through all of them, so you've only got a minute. But also, you might want to give context as well, so it's entirely up to you. You're not going to get a prize if you do all 15 or not. So don't too much pressure. Right then, so when Will gives me the nod, we'll be able to kick off. So, starting now, first question from me. Moneyball recruiting, fact or fiction?
I work in tech, fact.
Okay, me, second question. Biggest tech threat to football clubs?
Cybersecurity.
100,000 Burnley app users or 1 million social followers?
App users.
The biggest daily challenge you have as a CTO?
Context switching.
Budget priority right now?
Everything.
Best leadership quality to succeed in a football club?
Resilience.
Innovation, top down or bottom up?
Depends. Going to sit on the fence.
Biggest learning curve since starting at Burnley?
Learning about the business of football. So boring, but it is massively.
I've got 5, 4.
Oh, what's
3.
the hardest channel to capture data from?
I don't know. TV. No, I have no idea. TV.
TV. That's a good one. Yeah.
TV's terrible to get data from.
That was much better this time. Well done. Thanks for that, Joe. Well done. You've done the quick fire questions challenge.
Okay, awesome.
Joe, thanks for doing that. At the moment, data fragmentation is a really hot topic. 75% of clubs are yet to streamline sort of customer-facing platforms with sort of any sort of omnichannel experience. How are you approaching unifying customer data and customer interactions at Burnley?
And also versus, you've got in person and obviously online, because I'd imagine the club's trying to do a lot with fans who never make it. the stadium as well, and how do you through the JJ Watts and the do purpose to
100%.
as well.
I mean, like, there's a lot to take in there. So, like, and you've got a lot of suppliers. So, even down to like food and beverage, like as we said before, in the stadium, like, somebody's buying something. How do you register that? What's the value exchange back? Because if there's not something back on for them to scan a QR code, they're not going to do it, right? So you've got to be able to build those win-win situations with the fans in order to be able to. That value exchange is key in terms of giving the fans something so that you can get the data back, so that it makes sense for everyone going forwards. And also, in long down the road, it's going to lead to that personalized experience that you talked about as well. Like, I think, part of it's creating the right technology infrastructure, but really getting those right partners in who can work with us to be able to unify that data going forwards, because we don't have 50 developers, so we're not a technology business, we're a football club. So we've got to partner with the right technology businesses and create that infrastructure going forwards. So I think that's one of the key things that you've really got to look at, is how do you build that going forwards and create that ownership and access that data for us. AI is going to be brilliant for this as well, right, going forwards. I think in terms of unifying data, where you've got disparate data sets that haven't joined together naturally very easily previously, you can look at technology solutions to bring that together now and really kind of like hyper focus in terms of the data that you're looking to aggregate together.
I'm really interested in when you're unifying this data, who then uses it in the club? Is it something that you sit down with? Have you got a data scientist, or is it the marketing teams? When you
that's him. Data scientist as well.
Many hats.
Look, we've got a head of strategy who's really kind of data literate.
Yes.
Our marketing teams are really data heavy as well. So like, this isn't just like a single kind of pillar within the business that's data. Like modern organizations should have data throughout the entire organization, and especially in the football side, they've got data specialists as well. So really, you've just got to figure out how, like, making sure that everyone's data literate and bring it together.
What are we allowed to ask? What metrics you're reporting on? So like when you report up, what sort of key metrics what's a successful month in your job look like? And is that obviously it might be something you can't name, but is there any metrics you can name?
But it's everything from kind of like making sure that the networks don't fall down. Making sure that we're not getting making sure that cybersecurity is okay. Making sure that the digital platforms are robust, making sure that data quality is high. I mean, there's lots of different areas that we focus on from a technology perspective, just to make sure that we're kind of healthy going forwards.
You kind of said at the beginning, technology was one of the key pillars of when the new ownership came in. What is the sort of like North Star goal for you in technology? What is it you're driving at? What is the ultimate purpose for your role at the moment? And what's a success look like for you? How would you measure that?
I mean, ultimately, ultimately, it's success on the pitch, and fan happiness, fan engagement.
That's a good answer.
I'm not unhappy.
I mean, you got to, you've definitely, like, if you haven't got that bigger North Star from a technical perspective, then you're not really kind of like, you haven't got your eye on the big picture.
It's also, sorry, I was going to say, it's also tremendously difficult, right? Because what happens on the pitch matters too, and I think what we're finding at the moment with the manager, he feels like he has a connection with the fans. He's a very respectful individual as well, very calm in the way he goes about things, and he feels like whether we win, lose or draw, he's building a team that he's having a connection with the fans as well. And I guess what you're trying to do is then build around that, have the right individuals in that space, and then you can build around that to have the infrastructure in place to capitalise on what they're doing as well, right? Because it is where the ball bounces does matter as well. Yeah,
massively. A lot of what the fans react to is what happens on the pitch. So that football centricity of just making sure that everything that you're doing is trying to drive that football element going forwards, but also looking at the fan experience, right? Because if you turn up to Turf Moor and it's not an actual nice experience, but they're winning on the pitch, you're not really making the benefit. So there's work for the fans as well, right? There's a football centricity, but there's a fan centricity as well, right?
Yes,
It really clearly.
I think that's really a really great point on which to wrap, because we talk about it a lot here. We really should be doing everything in service of the fan, but sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. Technology sometimes, as you said, can be style over substance. It can be jazz hands, but actually, ultimately, it has to come down to improving that fan experience. So just before we finish, what's the one piece of advice you'd share with the industry about tech innovation in football? You, in your capacity as CTO of Burnley, what's that one bit of advice you'd give someone?
For somebody coming in to my role, I'd definitely say like it's about partnerships. So again, as I said, we're not going to have 100 developers here building our own technology infrastructure. It's about how do you bring those partnerships together to create a coherent story about where you're trying to go and bring them on the journey as well. That's super important, is letting the partners know where you're going as well and what your aspirations are, because they're businesses as well and they just want to be part of what success means to us. So a lot of it's around storytelling and bringing your partners on board. So I'd say that's a really kind of key thing going forward.
There's a lot of talking at the moment about anonymous fans. How do you actually uncover who is an anonymous fan? Because the people that might transact, that might attend, but you don't physically always know who they are. What tactics are you using to try and actually identify these people? Are there things that you're putting in place to try and to have a view of that individual, have a view of me as an individual, all the different things that I do? How do you even start to go about that?
Do you mean in terms of like just we don't know anything about you apart from your transaction?
Essentially, yeah.
I mean, there's things we need to do as a club.
Yeah.
So if you buy a ticket, we need to know more about you. Yeah. We need to know where you live, right? We need to know like that kind of information. So there's stuff that we have to have. And again, if you got an e-com purchase, like we have to send it somewhere.
Yeah.
We don't know if that's actually your address. Yeah. Your billing address is probably your address. So you do collect information just off the natural like ways that we do business. Like a transaction has to have certain amounts of data being able to pass. So you're going to gather that information going forwards. There's a lot of companies coming like talking about a lot more about KYC, about knowing your customer, around kind of everything from facial recognition and just how do you bring that together, but really understanding. And it's an interesting one. It really, really is, because you're looking at the ticketing side as well, and you want to get rid of touting. So and fans want to get rid of touting as well. They don't want it. So how do you do that without understanding more about your customer, about your fan, about understanding and identifying exactly who they are?
Well, interesting. Like you've got this where I can sell my ticket back, and I don't always get to the amount of games I'd like to, and I have been regularly doing that. Now sometimes it sells, sometimes it doesn't. Right, that's just based on demand, but at least then I know that it's going to a real fan because it's someone who's already on the database.
Yes.
And I'm getting effectively the pro-rated amount that I've spent on my season ticket, and it's a really painless experience. And again, that's getting rid of tails. That's an example for you straight away.
Yeah, 100%. So I think there is elements here where you learn more about your fans, but actually benefits fans themselves, because fans want more fans to be part of this, right? And there's an element where we need to understand more about our fans in order to be able to provide the next level of experiences.
It's interesting because if you near me, well, actually shutting it now, but the Amazon Fresh shops, where you go in, it's just literally you don't pay. Literally you go in, you scan a QR code, and that's it. You go around, pick up all your shopping items, go to a till, and it's done. And then you walk out. You don't even walk to a till; you just walk out. So, like you said, the technology is already there to enable that. It's just it'd be interesting to see how people embrace that. But I do like the angle of, especially me being a Man United fan. Like it's very hard to get tickets. It's very hard. It's only because if it's friends who've got season tickets holders and you get it through them. Like actually, how are you going to grow your international audience if you can't give tickets back to the clubs to then give to your international fans or your fans who are further away? So I think it's a really interesting.
And I think that ability to be able to do that, and that's just one example that I gave there, has been around for a long, long time. I remember when I was there 20 years ago, we put a ticketing system in. It existed, but the club didn't enact a strategy to actually work out how to use it.
Okay, well, thank you, Joe. It's been really interesting and really enjoyed talking to you, and hopefully people have learned a lot. I've been Lee Radburn.
I've been Ed Abbis.
And I'm Joe Redfern. And if you want to contact us, you can email us on
hello at attentionshift.media.
Producer Will there.
Let's try again. It's hello at attentionshift.media. Thanks, guys.
So that's it for this episode of The Attention Shift. Remember to like and subscribe and listen in next time. And do let us know what you think on hello at attentionshift.media. That's hello at attentionshift.media.